I have a problem. I have wanted to put up LED strips in my room for a couple of years now, but if you look up, you realize why I haven't. Yeah, I have to come up with a better solution. After some brainstorming, I came up with this. A cylinder with 16 sides, also called a hexadecagon, where the LEDs are pointing outwards from the center, creating an evenly distributed source of light. I then ordered the absolute minimum of everything needed, knowing full well that I, an expert, would never mess anything up or destroy a component. Or two, or three, or four. I used an Arduino Uno with the FastLED library to control the 1 meter strip, which was populated with 144 of these. These are individually addressable light-emitting diodes, and each of these components contains a tiny chip that makes it possible for every diode to have a different color, which makes everything much smoother compared to those cheap single-color LED strips. I needed 16 x 8 or 128 of them to complete the full circle. Remember when I said I ordered a minimum of everything? Well, the diodes randomly started dying left and right for some reason, and since the data lines are connected in series, if one of them fails, every LED beyond that point will stop working. After carefully stitching together the segments, I was left with 7 spare parts from the initial 16. Close call. Hopefully I won't have an issue. My soldering iron's heating element broke and I couldn't even fix it since they stopped manufacturing parts for it a very long time ago. Until I got a new tool, I was forced to use one of those massive soldering guns that gets hotter than the surface of the sun and obliterates any and every electronic component in a 10-meter radius. And I was about to use it on a component that turns into dust if you look at it the wrong way. That's amazing. The next step was to solder the included connector pins to an ESP32 module, which, unlike the Arduino, had Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, meaning I could use my phone to control the lights remotely. When I tried flashing WLED to the ESP32, it didn't work. I was poking around to see if there were any bad connections, only to burn my finger when I touched this tiny voltage regulator, which for some reason heated up ridiculously and wasn't even supplying power to the board. Since this wasn't supposed to happen, I thought that maybe it was the heat from the soldering gun that destroyed the board. But when I looked into it, I found that I wasn't the only one having this same exact issue, meaning the board was already bad when I got it. Not wanting another €10 to end up in flames, I instead chose a less powerful, but twice as cheap, Node MCU ESP8266 development board. Now I finally had a glance at how this thing was going to turn out, so I started testing different patterns and combinations with the Arduino, which actually went on for a pretty long time. Meanwhile, I 3D printed a simple diffuser that would go around the core, making the lights a lot smoother and spread out. It wasn't perfect, but I didn't have a lot of time to think since the new parts just arrived. Of course, I only got the minimum of everything, again. Hopefully, this time I won't regret. My excitement didn't last long because just an hour of testing later, the microcontroller stopped working. This time I'm not blaming it on the product. I'm pretty sure I connected something backwards and trying to add the microphone, and it destroyed the microcontroller. So yeah, we're back where we started. But I wasn't going to give up this easily. In fact, this is only the beginning. You see, I looked at my half-finished project and thought, I've never seen something like this before. And I went ooga booga caveman brain, let's turn it into a product. And so, official development started. I was making PCB designs for manufacturing, researching components, sending out surveys, creating company logos. Is this it? Am I really about to start a company? Something to give my life a purpose, a difficult goal to work towards? Finally, I found what I was looking for. Little did I know that only a couple of days later my perspective would change. I was right at the top of something called uninformed optimism, and once I got past that point, everything went downhill. One day, I was browsing on Indiegogo, looking at what other people were trying to sell, and then I saw it. Countless upon countless failed products. Ideas much better than mine, yet all failing to reach their funding goal. I realized that I was just delusional from the start. After all, why would anyone want another useless LED decoration on their table? The only reason I even started this entire project was for fun anyway, not to try to sell it, so what was I even thinking? Thankfully I realized my mistake early on and didn't spend too much time on the product side of things, but I was still demotivated, so I put the unfinished project away and then forgot about it. I was watching YouTube videos trying to find a fun device to build, and as I glanced over my workshop table, I remembered that I still hadn't finished my forgotten LED lamp. During the 4 months, I got a new soldering iron, organized my workspace, and I was just about to order things for my new project. So I thought, why shouldn't I finish what I started first before moving on? And so I did. With a dozen new components available, I no longer had to worry about messing up something and having to order it again, since I finally learned my lesson. Or so I thought. More on that later. I used an illuminated switch for turning the device on and off, which would later go on the top. I also realized that the LEDs were heating up quite a lot, so I used a random computer fan I found to cool them down. While active cooling wasn't necessary, I still wanted to make sure that the plastic wouldn't deform after a while. I also replaced the destroyed ESP8266 board and finished the wiring for it. And now it came the task I had been trying to avoid. It was time to design the shell, the part that would go around the core. I had to find out what the ideal distance from the LEDs was and how thick the walls would have to be in order to achieve a smooth diffusion on the shell. I made a quick test rig and found a distance of 12 and a thickness of 1.2 mm to be ideal. There was nothing else to do at this point but to finally face my fears, open up that goddamn CAD software and start designing. The problem wasn't that I hated 3D design, I actually love it, but it's the fact that I was still using something called Tinkercad. It's a simple web-based design software that I have been using ever since I got access to a 3D printer, but it absolutely wasn't designed for something I was about to attempt. After about 60 minutes I managed to finish the diffuser, so it was time to print. While the parts were printing, I heard that the fan was slowing down whenever the device got brighter. I mean, the power supply is powerful enough, the wires were thick and there didn't seem to be contact issues, until I checked the connectors. Yeah, this is really bad. I chose the cheapest connectors from eBay I could find, so no wonder they were barely functional. I temporarily soldered some wires together so they would reach the power supply. I know it looks awful, but I purposefully did a bad job to show you how not to do it. Oh, what's that sound? Oh, the top part just finished printing? Great! It's time to sand it down to remove the imperfections left by the supports. And now we can finally turn it on. Oh, that's right. I might have accidentally destroyed the switch when I was bending its pins, but it wasn't worth it anymore to replace it, so I just breached 2 contacts, making the switch entirely useless. Remember when I said I learned my lesson about ordering parts? Yeah, I'm still not sure. And then the final part finished printing. Now, before I show you the final product, I have to note 2 things. First, it is very difficult to film changing LED lights with a phone camera, so the end product looks way better in real life than how you see it on video. Second, it's got a couple of small issues. But in my defense, it's just a prototype. Or at least that's what I always say when I'm too lazy to make a better version. But enough yapping, here's the final result of my biggest project to date.